Empire on edge. Unknown vessel detected, no origin, no data, too fast, HFY Story. The sensor operator who first detected it had been doing this job for 11 years. And in 11 years she had seen everything that the Karath Empire's long-range network was capable of showing her. She had seen fleet movements and stellar events, and the occasional derelict vessel drifting on ancient trajectories that told quiet stories about civilizations that no longer existed to tell them themselves. She had seen sensor ghosts and instrument failures, and the specific category of reading that new operators panicked over and experienced ones, recognized immediately as atmospheric interference from the monitoring station's own hull during thermal cycling. She had never seen anything like this. The contact appeared at 3:41 on a Tuesday in the outer monitoring sweep that her station conducted every 4 hours, and it appeared not the way contacts usually appeared, gradually, resolving from background noise into a distinct return as the sweep's sensitivity built, but all at once, fully formed, as if it had materialized at the edge of detection range rather than traveled to it. One sweep, nothing. Next sweep, contact. She ran the standard verification immediately, which was not panic but procedure, and the verification came back consistent across all 4 independent subarrays, which meant it was real. She ran the classification query next, and the classification query was where everything stopped making sense, because the return signature was not in the database. Not an approximate match, not a degraded match, no match. The hull material producing the return was not cataloged in the Karath Empire's sensor database, which contained hull specifications for every known spacefaring civilization within 600 light-years. She ran the speed calculation while the classification was still processing, because speed was something the basic sweep data could give her without the full analysis, and the speed calculation produced a number that she looked at and then recalculated manually, because she was not going to escalate with a number that was wrong. The manual recalculation produced the same number. She escalated. Senior operator Drevon San arrived at her station in 3 minutes, which was what the escalation response time was supposed to be, and he looked at her display, and he looked at the contact, and he looked at the speed number, and he said, in the flat voice of someone setting aside their immediate reaction in favor of professionalism, "Verify the speed again." 3 times, she said, including 1 manual calculation. "Show me the manual," he said. She showed him. He looked at it for a long moment. "Get me the watch commander," he said, "now." The watch commander arrived, looked at the display, and said 4 words before she started making calls. The 4 words were, "What in the void?" The contact was moving at a speed that the Karath Empire's fastest military vessel could achieve only under emergency overload conditions that would compromise its drive systems within 40 minutes. The contact was not under emergency overload. The contact was, by every instrument reading available, traveling at this speed under what appeared to be normal operational parameters. No drive stress indicators, no thermal bloom consistent with pushed systems, no fluctuation in the propulsion signature that would indicate a vessel at its limits. It was simply fast. It was fast the way some things are fast, not straining toward speed but resting in it, the way a river rests in its current. And it had no origin. The retroactive track analysis, which the watch commander ran the moment she was briefed, traced the contact's trajectory backward through the monitoring network's historical data and found nothing. No prior detection at any range. The vessel had not come from anywhere that the Karath Empire's sensor network covered. It had appeared at the outer monitoring range's edge as if it had folded from outside the network's coverage and materialized moving at this speed, in this direction, on a vector that the tactical system calculated with cold precision, was aimed at the Karath Empire's inner systems. Not accidentally aimed. The vector was too clean, too direct for accident. Whatever this was, it knew where it was going. Origin, the watch commander said. None detectable, the senior operator said. Trajectory analysis shows no prior network contact. It came from outside our coverage. Outside our coverage, the watch commander said. She thought about what was outside the Kareth Empire's coverage. The Empire's network extended 600 light-years in every direction. 600 light-years was a significant radius. Beyond it was the unmonitored dark, the regions too distant and too sparse to justify the infrastructure investment of permanent monitoring posts. From the dark, she said. Yes, the senior operator said. Hull classification, no match, the watch commander said, reviewing the report. None, the senior operator confirmed. Speed, the watch commander started. I know what the speed is, the senior operator said quietly. The watch commander looked at the number again. She picked up the priority absolute channel and called Fleet Command. Fleet Command picked up in 30 seconds and the duty admiral listened to the report without interrupting, which was how the duty admiral operated. She was a woman who believed that interrupting incoming information was a form of strategic error because you could not learn what you had not heard. When the watch commander finished, the duty admiral said, "Send me everything, and get me the Strategic Assessment Division." She paused. "And get me whoever we have at the Senate Liaison Office," she said. "Wake them up if you need to." She was thinking about the Senate because the Senate was the only frame she had for something that came from outside known space, moved at impossible speed, had hull material that matched nothing, and was aimed at her empire's inner systems. The Senate had Earth in it. Earth had been doing things for a decade that produced exactly this kind of profile: the impossible speed, the unclassifiable hull, the appearance from nowhere. She was not certain it was Earth. She was not certain it wasn't. Either way, she needed information before she needed weapons, and the Senate liaison was the fastest path to information about things that should not exist but apparently did. She pulled up the contact on her own display and watched it move. Fast, certain, silent. Coming from the dark. She thought, whatever this is, it knows exactly where it is going, and it is going there without announcing itself. And in 11 years of flag officer experience, she had learned that the most dangerous things were not the ones that announced themselves. The most dangerous things were the ones that simply arrived. This one was arriving. She watched it move, and she thought very carefully about what to do next. The contact did not change its speed or its vector or its silence. It simply came. That was, she thought, the most unsettling thing of all. Not the speed, not the unknown hull, not the trajectory aimed at her empire's inner systems. The silence. Things that were dangerous and new, it sometimes announced themselves to prevent escalation. Things that were dangerous and didn't care didn't bother. The specific silence of something that was moving toward you and had not said a word was either the silence of something that intended to speak when it arrived, or the silence of something that did not consider speech necessary. She did not know which this was. She was going to find out. She began assembling her response options with the methodical precision of someone who understood that the space between not knowing and knowing was the most dangerous space to be reckless in, and she was not a reckless woman. She was, however, a thorough one. The contact moved through the Empire's outer monitoring zone, consistent, fast, silent, and the Kareth Empire assembled everything it had around the question of what it was, and the question did not yield to the assembly, and the contact came closer, and at 6:21, 2 hours and 40 minutes after the first detection, it did something that none of the analysis had predicted and none of the response planning had accounted for. It slowed down. Not gradually, sharply. A velocity reduction that the sensor arrays registered as a deceleration curve of a kind that the Empire's drive engineers, when they were shown the data 40 minutes later, described with the specific mixture of professional admiration and personal discomfort that characterized experts encountering something that exceeded their field's current understanding. The contact slowed to a speed that was still significantly faster than the Empire's military vessels at normal operation, but that was no longer in the range that had been producing the watch commander's specific quality of concern. And at the end of the deceleration curve, it settled into what the tactical system recognized as a standard approach speed for a vessel, intending to come to rest at a specific coordinate. The coordinate it was approaching was the outer boundary of the Kareth Empire's primary inhabited zone. Not past the boundary, to the boundary. The contact was decelerating to a stop at the line where the Empire's territorial space formally began. The watch commander stared at this for a moment. "It's asking for permission," the senior operator said quietly from beside her. "That's what stopping at the boundary means. It's asking if it can come in." The watch commander thought about this. She thought about something that came from the dark at impossible speed, with unclassifiable hull material on a precise trajectory, and then, at the boundary of her empire's space, stopped. She thought about what that behavior communicated. Not hostility, a hostile approach did not stop at the boundary. Not weakness, the speed and the hull material and the certainty of the vector communicated nothing that could be read as weakness. It communicated something else. Something that she needed a word for, and the word she found, after a moment of deliberate thought, was consideration. The contact had considered the Empire's boundary and had stopped at it. "Open a hailing frequency," she said. "Standard range," the communications officer said. She thought about the speed, about where the contact had come from, about the hull that matched nothing. "All frequencies," she said. "Everything we have. Whatever this is, I don't know what communication range it's working with." The communications officer opened everything. They waited. The response came 11 seconds later. Not on any of the frequencies they had opened. The signal came through on a quantum relay band that the Kareth Empire's network was capable of receiving, but that no one in the monitoring station had transmitted on, because the quantum relay band was for long-range communications across distances where standard frequencies were impractical, not for close-range contact with something sitting at your boundary. The signal was clear. No interference, no distortion, the specific clarity of a signal from a very sophisticated source. The voice that came through the quantum relay said, "This is Commander Yusuf Adebio of the United Earth Space Command, aboard the warship Unconquered Sun. I am transmitting on quantum relay because I understand your standard frequencies may have range limitations relative to my current distance from your monitoring arrays. I am holding position at your territorial boundary. I would like permission to enter if you're willing. I have something I need to tell your leadership. It's important." The watch commander looked at the senior operator. The senior operator looked back. The watch commander thought about the Unconquered Sun. She had heard of it. Everyone in the Senate's awareness sphere had heard of it by now, 41 kilometers, the reckoning weapon, the thing that had been present at the outer Perseus Reach engagement, and that had dissolved the consuming architecture fragment above Verath 9, and that was, by every account that reached the Empire's intelligence division, the most capable single military vessel that any civilization in the known galaxy had ever built. She thought about 41 kilometers. She looked at the contact on her display. She thought about the deceleration curve at the boundary, the stopping, the asking for permission. She thought about the specific quality of patience required to travel at whatever speed the Unconquered Sun traveled at, across whatever distance it had covered, and then stop at a boundary and ask. "Tell Commander Adebio," she said, and her voice was steady in the way that she had trained it to be steady across 11 years of flag officer service. "That permission is granted, and ask him if he needs anything while he's coming in." The communications officer looked at her. "Ask if he needs anything," the officer said. "He said he has something important to tell us," she said. "It's a long trip from wherever he came from. Ask if he needs anything." The officer sent the message. Adebio's response on the quantum relay 11 seconds later. Thank you for the welcome, we're fine. We'll be there shortly. The contact, the unconquered sun, began moving again into Kareth Empire territorial space at the speed that was significantly faster than the Empire's military vessels at normal operation, but was no longer in the range that produced the specific quality of concern. Coming in. Shortly, it had said. The watch commander started making calls. She estimated, between 1 and 2 hours before the unconquered sun reached the inner system. 1 to 2 hours to brief the Emperor, assemble the strategic command, contact the Senate liaison to verify the vessel's identity through official channels, and prepare whatever preparation was possible for the arrival of something that had come from the dark at impossible speed to tell them something important. She used every minute of it. The contact moved through the Empire's space, steady and certain, and the Empire watched it come. And at 8:47, the unconquered sun emerged from the last fold transit segment of its approach and came to a full stop in the Kareth primary system's outer zone, and the primary system's sensor arrays, which were considerably more powerful than the border monitoring stations, resolved the contact into a complete picture for the first time. 41 kilometers. The Kareth Empire's Strategic Command, assembled in the flagship command center aboard the fleet carrier Sovereign Pride, looked at the resolution on the primary display and was, collectively, very quiet for a long moment. Grand Admiral Vreth Kasson, who had been in command of the Kareth military for 19 years, and who had managed the Empire's strategic affairs through 3 regional conflicts and 1 situation that the official record described as a security normalization operation, and that he personally described, in private, as the most difficult 3 months of his life, looked at the resolution and said, 41. 41 kilometers, his tactical officer confirmed. Ours, he said. Our largest vessel is the Sovereign Pride, his tactical officer said, 2.3 kilometers. Yes, he said, I know what our largest vessel is. He looked at the display. What is the unconquered sun doing? He said. Holding position, sir, the tactical officer said. No weapons active, no targeting arrays, no aggressive emissions. It is a pause. It appears to be waiting. Waiting for what? He said. Unknown, the tactical officer said. It has not communicated since the border exchange. Kasson thought about the border exchange, about stopping at the boundary and asking permission and saying, I have something important to tell your leadership. He thought about a ship that could have come through the boundary without asking and had stopped and waited. He picked up the command channel to the Emperor's personal staff. Tell the Emperor, he said, that the unconquered sun is in the primary system and it is waiting to speak with someone, and I believe it is waiting specifically for someone with appropriate authority, and I believe the Emperor is that authority. He paused. And tell the Emperor that I have been in this service for 19 years, and I have never in those 19 years recommended anything as strongly as I am recommending, that we listen to what Commander Adebio has come to tell us. He looked at the display. Because whatever it is, he said, he came from the dark to say it. That is not the behavior of someone with a small thing to say. He waited. The unconquered sun waited with him. The primary system star moved through its slow and ancient arc, indifferent to the specific drama of a Tuesday morning that had begun with an impossible sensor reading, and was proceeding, with the unhurried certainty of very significant things, toward a conversation that the Kareth Empire had not known it needed, until the vessel that was going to have it had appeared from nowhere at 3:41 and stopped at the boundary and asked if it could come in. At 9:23, the Emperor's Chamberlain transmitted a response to the unconquered sun's quantum relay channel. The response said, Commander Adebio, the Kareth Emperor will receive you. A shuttle escort will be provided, Please transmit your boarding configuration requirements. Adebio's response came in 11 seconds. Thank you, he said. Standard shuttle configuration is fine. I'll come with 2 aides. No need for ceremony. We have a lot to discuss and I'd rather get to it. Kassan read the response on his display. No need for ceremony. He thought about 41 kilometers of the most capable warship ever built, present in the primary system of the Kareth Empire, and the man commanding it saying no need for ceremony. We have a lot to discuss. He thought about what a man with a lot to discuss, who had come from the dark at impossible speed, to say it looked like when he arrived. He thought he was about to find out. He straightened his uniform and went to meet the shuttle. The thing he had not told the Emperor's Chamberlain, because it was not yet confirmed, and he was not a man who transmitted unconfirmed assessments to the Imperial staff, was what the Strategic Assessment Division had told him 40 minutes ago when they had finished their preliminary analysis of the unconquered sun's approach vector. The approach vector, the precise, clean trajectory that the vessel had followed from the outer monitoring network's detection range to the territorial boundary, traced back through the empty space of the unmonitored dark, and intersected, at a distance of approximately 800 light-years, with a region that the Kareth Empire's astronomical charts marked as the Outer Hollow. The Outer Hollow was a region of space that the Empire's surveys had designated as having unusually low stellar density and unusually high electromagnetic interference, which made detailed observation of it difficult, which was the astronomical explanation for why the Empire's knowledge of it was limited. The Strategic Assessment Division's analyst had added a note to the bottom of the assessment that said, "This intersection may be coincidental, and the vector analysis carries significant uncertainty at this range. But if the unconquered sun's origin point is within the Outer Hollow, this should be considered in context with recent Senate intelligence regarding the consuming architecture's primary force withdrawal vector, which also intersects the Outer Hollow region based on the Outer Perseus Reach engagement data." Kassan had read this note 3 times. He was still thinking about it when the shuttle-carrying Commander Adebio arrived in the Sovereign Pride's docking bay, and the bay doors opened, and the commander of the most powerful warship in the known galaxy stepped out onto the deck. Adebio was not what Kassan had expected, which was itself something he filed for later consideration. He had expected, he was not certain what he had expected, something that matched the vessel, something that announced itself. The commander of the unconquered sun, in Kassan's imagination, was a large presence, a performed authority. The man who stepped out of the shuttle was medium height, early 50s, in a standard UESC service uniform with no decorative elements beyond rank insignia. He walked with the specific quality of someone who was comfortable everywhere and performing nowhere, and he looked around the docking bay with the genuine attention of someone who had not been here before and found the place worth looking at. He saw Kassan and walked directly to him. "Grand Admiral Kassan," he said, his voice was even unforced. "I'm Adebio, thank you for the welcome." "Commander Adebio," Kassan said, "the Empire is we were not expecting you." "No," Adebio said, "I know, I apologize for the unannounced arrival. The situation didn't give us time to file a visit request through standard channels." He paused. "I'll explain everything. Is the Emperor available?" "The Emperor is preparing to receive you," Kassan said. "We have a formal reception room." "The formal room is fine," Adebio said. "But before we go, can I ask you something?" "Yes," Kassan said. "The Outer Hollow," Adebio said. "What does your empire know about it?" Kassan looked at him. He thought about the Strategic Assessment Division's note. "Low stellar density," he said carefully. "High electromagnetic interference. Our surveys have been limited. Why?" Adebio looked at him steadily. "Because that's where I've been," he said, "for the last 6 weeks, and what I found there is why I'm here." He paused. The formal room, let's go. I want to say this once to everyone who needs to hear it at the same time. He started walking toward the bay exit. Kassan fell into step beside him. Commander, he said, the thing you found in the outer hollow. Yes, Adebyo said. Is it the reason you traveled at the speed we detected on approach? Kassan said. Adebyo looked at him sideways. Yes, he said simply. Kassan processed this. They walked through the Sovereign Pride's corridors, the two aides falling in behind them, the escort guard falling in around all of them, and Kassan thought about the speed reading that had produced 4 words from his watch commander, and 11 years of experience from his senior sensor operator, and the specific quality of an admiral who was recommending strongly that they listen. Whatever Adebyo had found in the outer hollow had made him travel at that speed to come and say it. Kassan had been in this service for 19 years. He was not a man who frightened easily. He was, for the first time in a long time, genuinely afraid of what he was about to hear. The formal reception room was at the Sovereign Pride's command level, a space designed for exactly this kind of meeting, large enough for the full strategic command, furnished with the specific gravitas of a room where important things happened. The Emperor was already present when they arrived, seated at the head of the room's primary table, with his senior advisors arranged around him. The strategic command assembled on the room's eastern arc. The Senate liaison officer, who had been pulled from his quarters at 400 and was still processing the morning, was at the room's edge with his communication terminal active. Adebyo took the seat that was offered to him at the table's center. His 2 aides sat behind him. He did not bring notes or materials or any of the presentation apparatus that formal briefings usually carried. He looked around the room and he said, I'm going to tell you something and I need you to hear all of it before you respond, because the response depends on the complete picture and the pieces of it don't make sense without each other. Can everyone agree to that? The Emperor looked at him. He was a man in his 60s, with the specific bearing of someone who had been the Karath Empire's head of state for 20 years and who had developed in those 20 years the ability to read rooms quickly and accurately. He read this one. Agreed, the Emperor said. Adebyo nodded. 6 weeks ago, he said, the unconquered sun was deployed on an observation mission to the outer hollow region, following up on sensor data that Earth's Deep Range network collected during the fragment monitoring operations we ran after the outer Perseus Reach engagement. He paused. We went because the data suggested something was in the hollow that we needed to understand. We did not know what it was. We suspected, based on the approach vectors and the electromagnetic interference patterns, that it might be related to the consuming architecture's withdrawal from the Persian Reach engagement. The room was completely still. It was, he said. What we found in the outer hollow is the consuming architecture's main force, not a fragment, the main body. The thing that we engaged in the outer Perseus Reach, which withdrew after the 9-day engagement. It withdrew to the outer hollow. He let this land. The main body did not dissolve, he said. It did not dissipate. It withdrew the way a tide withdraws still present, reconsolidating, waiting. We have been assuming since the outer Perseus Reach engagement that the withdrawal represented a decisive outcome. It did not. It represented a tactical retreat. He paused. The Ethon's data on the architecture's historical behavior includes 3 instances of tactical retreat followed by reconsolidation and renewed advance. In all 3 historical cases, the reconsolidated force was larger than the force that had retreated, because the retreat allowed the architecture to absorb additional material and expand its capability before returning. He paused again. We have been watching it reconsolidate for 6 weeks. The reconsolidation is nearing completion. He looked around the room. The outer hollow is 800 light-years from the Karath Empire's outer boundary, he said. Based on the architecture's historical advance speed, and based on the Ethon's assessment of its current reconsolidation state, We have between 14 and 22 months before it reaches Senate and Council space. He paused. The approach vector that the reconsolidating force appears to be orienting toward, based on the movement patterns the unconquered sun observed, is not the outer Perseus reach, where the Aegis network is positioned. The approach vector is the Karath Empire's outer boundary. Silence. Complete silence. Kassan looked at the Emperor. The Emperor was very still, in the way of a man who has heard something large and is holding it carefully while he processes it. Why the Empire's boundary? Kassan said. Why not the Perseus reach where it was before? Because the Aegis network is there, Adebyo said. The architecture assessed the network after the outer Perseus reach engagement. It knows what the network is. It is not going back to a position where the network has coverage. He paused. The Empire's outer boundary is outside the Aegis network's coverage zone. The architecture is not choosing this route because it wants to target the Empire specifically. It is choosing this route because this route does not have what stopped it last time. Kassan understood this immediately, with the specific clarity of a military officer processing a tactical assessment. It found the gap, he said. It found the gap, Adebyo confirmed. Yes. The Emperor spoke for the first time since Adebyo had begun. What does Earth intend to do about this? He said. Adebyo looked at him. Earth is already doing several things, he said. The Aegis network's outer units are being repositioned to extend coverage toward the Empire's boundary. That process began 48 hours ago and will take approximately 8 months to complete. The fleet is being deployed to the coverage gap with everything we can move. He paused. But the gap is large, and the timeline is 14 to 22 months, and the architecture's reconsolidated force is larger than what we engaged in the outer Perseus reach. He paused again. Earth cannot close this gap alone, that is why I am here. The Emperor looked at him. You need the Empire's fleet, he said. I need the Empire's fleet, and I need the Empire to transmit this assessment to every civilization in your border region. And I need the Karath Empire to be part of what responds to this because the Karath Empire is in the path, and being in the path means you have both the most to lose and the most to contribute. He paused. I did not come here to ask for help. I came here to offer partnership. There is a difference. The Emperor was quiet. The Senate, he said, the Council, they know. Earth's Senate ambassador is transmitting this assessment to the full Senate simultaneously with this briefing, Adebyo said. The Council's liaison has the same information. The Ethon have been informed and are repositioning their observation network. He paused. I am here because the Karath Empire is the civilization most directly in the path, and because I wanted the Empire to hear this from me directly, face to face, rather than through a relay. He paused again. And because the unconquered sun is the fastest way to carry the information, and speed was what the situation required. Kassan thought about the speed reading at 341, about the deceleration at the boundary, about stopping and asking permission. He thought about the distance from the outer hollow to the Empire's boundary. 800 light-years. 6 weeks of travel time for a vessel capable of moving at the speed the monitoring station had detected. He thought about what it meant that Adebyo had come this way, directly, fast, face-to-face, instead of transmitting the information through relay and staying in the Perseus reach to manage the response. You could have sent this by relay, he said. The quantum relay network would have carried this assessment in hours. Yes, Adebyo said. But you came yourself, Kassan said, in the unconquered sun. Yes, Adebyo said. Why, Kassan said. Adebyo looked at him. Because the Karath Empire is going to be asked to commit its fleet to a combined response to something that could end it, he said. And civilizations that are asked to commit their fleets to existential responses deserve to be asked by someone willing to travel 800 light-years to look them in the eye when they ask. He paused. Relay messages are for information. This is not information. This is a request for partnership in something that matters more than anything that has happened in this region of the galaxy in a very long time. He paused. That deserved the trip. The room was quiet. The Emperor looked at Adebyo for a long moment. Then he looked at Kassan. Kassan thought about 19 years. He thought about 3 regional conflicts and 1 security normalization operation. He thought about every strategic assessment he had ever reviewed and every decision he had ever recommended, and the specific weight of the recommendations that had mattered most. He thought about the outer hollow and the main body reconsolidating, and the gap in the Aegis network's coverage, and 14 to 22 months. He thought about a 41-kilometer vessel that had stopped at his empire's boundary and asked permission to come in, and then, when it came in, had sat in the primary system waiting and had then said no need for ceremony. We have a lot to discuss. He looked at the Emperor. The Empire's fleet, he said, should be committed. The Emperor looked at him for a moment. Then he looked at Adebyo. Tell me what you need, he said, and tell me what Earth is bringing. I want the full picture before I give you my answer. That's fair, Adebyo said. Let me tell you everything. He talked for 90 minutes. He covered the architecture's reconsolidation state, the approach vector, the Aegis network repositioning, the fleet deployment, the Ethon's assessment, the Senate and Council responses, and the specific role the Kareth Empire's fleet could play in the combined response. Not as a subordinate force, but as a regional partner with specific knowledge of their own boundary zone that no outside force could replicate. He covered the timeline and the uncertainties in the timeline. He covered the best-case scenario and the realistic-case scenario and the worst-case scenario, and he did not minimize any of them, because the Emperor had asked for the full picture, and the full picture was what the Emperor deserved. He covered what success looked like. The architecture's reconsolidated force encountering a combined defense at the coverage boundary that made the cost of advance exceed the benefit, producing another withdrawal, this one deeper and longer than the first. He covered what failure looked like, briefly, once, and then moved past it because dwelling on failure was not strategically useful and was not why he was here. He answered every question that the Emperor and Kassan and the Strategic Command asked, and there were many questions, and the answers were honest, and the honesty was the point. When it was over, when the 90 minutes had been used and the questions were exhausted, the Emperor was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "The Kareth Empire has existed for 400 years. We have managed our region through conflict and crisis, and the specific difficulties of governing 43 systems across 600 light years. We have done this without external partnership, for the most part, because partnership requires trust and trust requires experience, and we have had limited experience with civilizations that warranted the trust." He paused. "I am looking at Commander Adebyo," he said, "who traveled 800 light years in 6 weeks to sit in this room and look me in the eye and ask for partnership. I am looking at the unconquered sun on my display, which stopped at my boundary and asked permission to enter." He paused. 400 years of managing our region alone has not prepared us for what is in the outer hollow. Whatever prepared you for it, the Senate, the Aegis network, the Ethon alliance, we did not have it. We will need it. He looked at Adebyo. "The Kareth Empire's fleet is yours. What do you need from us first?" Adebyo looked at him. He said, "Show me your boundary zone, every sensor post, every patrol route, every installation. I want to understand what you have before I tell you how we use it. Your people know this space better than we do. That knowledge is as valuable as the ships." Kassan was already pulling up the maps. Outside, in the primary system's outer zone, the unconquered sun held its position, 41 kilometers of patience and purpose, visible from the Sovereign Pride's viewports as a shape against the stars that was nothing like anything the Kareth Empire had ever seen before in 400 years of managing its region. The meeting ran for 6 more hours. At the end of it, the Karath Empire and Earth had the beginning of something that neither had used the word for yet, but that the content of those 6 hours described clearly: a framework, a plan, a shared understanding of what was coming and what it required, and what they were going to do about it together. The sensor operator who had first seen the contact at 3:41 was still on shift when the news came through the station's communication network. The announcement that the Empire had committed its fleet, that the response was being organized, that whatever was in the outer hollow was going to find something different from what it had found in the outer Perseus Reach. It was going to find the Karath Empire on one side and Earth on the other, and everything that both of them had built between them in 6 hours of honest conversation about an impossible situation. She thought about the contact appearing at the edge of her detection range, all at once, fully formed. She thought about the speed reading that she had recalculated manually, because she was not going to escalate with a number that was wrong. She thought about the watch commander's 4 words. She thought about what had come from the dark, and what it had said when it stopped at the boundary and asked to come in. She thought, "I have something important to tell your leadership." She thought, yes, you did. She made a notation in her log, the standard end-of-detection notation that sensor operators made when a contact was resolved from unknown to identified, and she wrote in the field marked Contact Resolution, UESC Warship Unconquered Sun, Earth. Commander Adebio, arrived with warning, departed with partnership. She thought that was accurate. She submitted the log and went back to watching the dark, because that was her job, and because the dark had just reminded her why the watching mattered. Outside the monitoring station, in the black and ancient space of the outer empire, the stars continued in their courses, and somewhere 800 light-years away in the outer hollow, something vast and patient was finishing the process of becoming ready. But on this side of that distance, something was also getting ready. And it had started, as significant things often did, with one vessel appearing from nowhere at 3:41 on a Tuesday, moving at a speed that should not have been possible, stopping at a boundary and asking if it could come in. That was how it started. What it became was a different and larger story, built on the foundation of that specific Tuesday morning, when the Karath Empire's long-range sensor network saw something it had no category for, and the watch commander asked 4 words and the senior operator calculated the speed 3 times and then manually, and the duty admiral decided that information came before weapons, and the emperor listened to 90 minutes of the full picture and said, "What do you need from us first?" That was how it started, with the asking and the answering, with the stopping at the boundary, with the coming from the dark to say something that needed to be said face to face by someone willing to travel to say it. That was, in the end, what it always came down to. The willingness to make the trip,